Robert Stevens. My title is Founder and Chief Inspector. The reason I'm the Chief Inspector is because when you start a company, you call yourself anything you want. And when I rode my mountain bike from ditching class at the U of M over to the Secretary of State's building, I gave my articles of incorporation. And a couple of things were missing, and one of them was my title. I called myself CEO of a one-person company back then. It seemed kind of arrogant, so I've just been kind of making it up as I go along, and that's pretty much how I'm going to give my talk today. The reason I agreed to come here is just because Geek Squad has had a lot of informal relationships and affectionate relationships with companies, even if they didn't know it. So we were sending people to Visi for years before even Visi probably caught on. And same with Dell. Before we had a partnership with Best Buy, we would be in a position to influence the purchase of hardware and stuff like that. And so obviously with Dell's online ordering, we could create a cart, customize a computer, and then just send a link to the customer, and they could click on it and call us when it arrives, and then we would do the setup. So we essentially have been Dell's in-home technology support for years. And then slowly, we hear stories of like, oh, how'd you find out about us? Oh, well, I was on the phone with Dell tech support, and the guy said, oh, call the Geek Squad if you have a problem with this. That's not covered under warranty. Before Best Buy, anybody remember Computer City in Roseville? I mean, we had an account there, and then the guy, when they closed down, he went over to CompUSA, and then we dealt with CompUSA, and so we had a relationship with Best Buy for years before Best Buy knew it. In fact, one of the reasons why I knew that I wanted to start dating Best Buy was because more than half my employees at the time worked for Best Buy. So I knew they had good people. They obviously struggled with service, and I'll talk about that. So I'm going to kind of tell you a story that's relevant for those of you that live here. So it'll be kind of fun because you'll get some of my inside jokes that I give this talk all over the world. And but I have a strong respect for Visi, because I think Minnesota is like the Russia of America. Any of you that are familiar with the great Russian literature or the Russian heritage of physicists, there's a reason why they lead the world in literature and physics. It's cold in Russia, and there's not much to do there when it's cold, and that's what makes us so disciplined here in Minnesota. I was surprised you even thank people for coming here in the rain. The rain is nothing to us here in Minnesota. So struggle is the word. And in fact, I think whether it's economic times like now or it's the weather, and it's not January, February that kills you in Minnesota. It's March. It's that 165-degree day of sun that we get, and then we begin to have a bit of hope, and we see a few people actually boldly enough to take the tops down off their cars. And I even used to remember seeing some people on the campus like with folding chairs sitting out trying to get a little bit of a suntan, and then we get walloped with snow late March, and that just kills your spirit, but it makes us tougher competitors. The only reason I think Silicon Valley can work on an economic level of productivity is because geeks don't go outside, so they don't know there are mountains there. They don't know they can go snowboarding in Tahoe. Here we have no mountains, we have no oceans to speak of. So anyway, this is part of the Minnesota story, and it's a kind of an update in progress. Right now, Geek Squad has, and we did acquire Best Buy. It was in 2002, and so Geek Squad has existed 6 years. On a smaller stage and 6 years on the larger stage. And so I hope to kind of report back to those of you that are members of small and medium-sized companies. Geek Squad's still a small company at heart. It just has global ambitions for world domination. I'm going to prove today that every company has intentions for world domination. It does. If Microsoft had just told people they want to dominate the world, we probably would have respected it a little bit more because then we know where they stand on it. But every company technically wants to dominate the world, not necessarily in size or revenues. Even if you're a handmade Swiss watchmaker in Geneva, and you only make 5 watches a year for $700,000 each, and there are people that do this, then they dominate the world of handmade watches. And the point is that every brand should know who it is, what it stands for, and what it doesn't stand for. Apple teaches us as much about design is about what you don't do as much as what you do. What buttons you don't put on the device. So Apple competes against itself, and all the best brands really compete against themselves. So despite the recent demise of Circuit City, which I'm actually not that happy about, there's nothing more dangerous than a wounded competitor. And I don't wish ill will on anybody because, frankly, I only view competition merely as a pre-employment experience at Geek Squad. So I'm going to start at the beginning. This is the international symbol for struggle. It's the reason startups are so innovative and why so many start in college. This is, as you will recognize, the staple for college nutrition. The world over. Here we call it ramen noodle. In Europe, they refer to it as cup noodle in the UK, so I've had to adjust my slides. But it's all the same. In fact, the founder of ramen passed away last year at the ripe old age of 102, so appearances can be deceiving regarding nutritional value. I start with this because I like to tell people the best thing ever to happen to me is I had no money when I started my company. Because if I had money, I would have done what you're supposed to do. You hire a PR firm, you hire a graphic designer to create a brand, but when you don't have money, you are the marketing department, you are the PR department, you do everything, and that's the way it should be. And as I'll say later, it becomes even more relevant that I never expected. It becomes even more relevant in a large company. So I had no money, and it was very tough. Any of you that are familiar with the House of Hanson on the campus in Dinkytown? Yeah. The low point in my life had to be September of 1990. I'd been living in Minnesota for 9 months, and I bounced a check for 41 cents for a microwave burrito. And back then TCF bounced check fees were heading north of $22. And I just checked with some high school kids, and they say it's up to $35 now. I'm sure it'll go higher with the financial banks needing more money. But, that was the origins of Geek Squad's fiscal discipline. Buddha says life is suffering. Well, so is college. So, anyway, when I started my company, it was at its most integrated, really, in the very beginning. I was the fleet department, I was the call center. You remember, even back then, you could forward your cell phone to a landline, and there wouldn't be any per minute charges. They caught on to that after a couple of years, and it's no longer possible. They charge you for the minutes, even if you forward it. But that's how you save money. And those are things that are always important, especially like right now. I gave a talk yesterday in New York and to a bunch of CEOs, and they're like, "Oh, how are you feeling about the economy?" I'm like, "I'm ready." I slept on a couch. I used to sleep on my conference table in the warehouse district, and I can do it again. You never quite get the taste of ramen out of here. So anyway, in the early 1990s, first I'd like to tell you why I went to art school. I grew up in Chicago. Took every computer class I could. The fundamental, pivotal moment, let's see if this works. Here's a little tip for you. Most people don't ever use this tip on PowerPoint. On all these advancers, or if you're on your laptop, hit the B key. If you want people to pay attention to what you're saying, blank the screen. And there's nothing else for them to look at. Now, listen, I wasn't a member of the chess club, and I'm not really a raging Star Trek fan. I've seen all the Star Wars films, and I'm not like a comic book geek. But in high school, I got my first computer was the Commodore VIC-20. Okay? And I think a lot of us affectionately look at that machine as the Commodore 64. It's really a wonderful, simple piece of machinery, a computer for the rest of us. And so when I was a freshman, I took basic programming, and that was kind of an advanced class at the time, so there were a lot of seniors in my class, many of whom were on the football team. And this is when I began to realize that knowledge is power, because I just copied computer games for the Commodore 64 for those members of the football team. And when my other friends were getting dunked in the toilets in the locker room, it was like that scene in Goodfellas where Ray Liotta's teacher the postman gets beat up for not bringing a grade report card home. I was kind of a made guy. And that's when I really began to develop a different point of view about what technology could do for somebody. I took every computer class I could.
Busy data centers, safe, secure, always on.